There's some grooves cut out. Little Flappy is a really good accessory. A big thank you to Serotonin Outdoors for sending me the Firefly Mini Stove with accessories. So you may be wondering why Serotonin Outdoors kindly sent me a stainless steel version of their new stove. Well, the reason for that is that I did a video a while back on the Alp Kit stove of a similar design. And I wasn't overly complimentary about this, to be fair. There's a lot of things, or some things, that I didn't like. I didn't like the airflow. I didn't like the fact that as soon as you go to touch it, it kind of starts falling apart. And when I went out to use it, I put a load of sticks in there and I put a pot on top. It just stifled the airflow. So for me, it didn't work. Recently, I had a comment on the video that I did of the Alp Kit stove, and Serotonin Outdoors, they put a message on there saying they've got a updated version. And so I contacted them and I said, "Oh, you've got an updated version, have you? You wouldn't mind sending me a copy so I could have a look at it?" And they said, "Sure, no problem at all." So that's how I ended up with the Serotonin Firefly Mini Stove. They also kindly sent me some accessories to try out, which was rather nice. Now, you'll probably notice a lot of similarities between the Serotonin stove and the Alp Kit stove. There's very good reason for that. Serotonin, it's their design, and Alp Kit sold the first version of it. Going forward, you can do that without it falling apart. That was one of my issues with the first design. Where was I? Going forward, Serotonin are going to continue to develop their designs and have them exclusively under their brand. So the main body of the stove has had some changes. One of the changes is that on the top, there's some grooves cut out of each corner of the end plates. And that allows you to put this clever little rack on top. And what that does, that gives you a lot more height, so air can get under it. Then you can put a pot on top without stifling any of the heat inside the stove. You may also notice that inside, if I can get this right, if you look at the main panel inside, they got some indentations in. And that's to help prevent warping. Another change that they've made, which I thought was a really good idea, was the introduction of this little Flappy. And that has two jobs. The first job is to allow more air to flow through. And that was one of my big criticisms of the first incarnation of this, is that once you put a pot on top or you put your sticks in there, it restricts the airflow greatly. So what they've done, they've cleverly put a hole in there, and so that allows a lot more airflow. Also, it allows you to use a gas stove, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. There's also this little tray, table, whatever you want to call it. What that does is twofold. One, it gives you an ashtray. So if you've got any embers coming out the bottom of there that are hot, that'll catch it. And also that helps to keep you off the ground. If you was to put this on, say, grass and use it, what you're doing, you're stifling airflow underneath. So if you put it on the little tray, whatever's going on under there doesn't affect your airflow. What you could also do is, if you've got a flat surface and you don't need to put the legs up, don't put the legs up. Having said that, if you're going somewhere and you know you don't need this and you want to save weight, you could just take the main body of the unit. Also included is this trivet. It's made up of 4 pieces of flat metal with grooves, etc., cut out of it. And what this does, this allows the whole thing to be more multifunctional rather than just a wood type burning stove. So what you can do, the idea is you slot it on top, you can put a gas stove in there. They say you can use it with a Trangia stove, but that wouldn't be my favoured way of doing that. I'll talk about that in a sec. And then that'll also go down inside, and you could raise up whatever you've got there and use fuel tablets with an optional accessory, which is the fuel tablet plate. I'll get onto all that in just a second. So that, in essence, if you was buying the main body of the stove, the main gubbins, as it were, this is exactly what you would get. There's also additional accessories. Now this, for me, is the most useful one. This is the rack that goes on top, as I mentioned earlier, to give you nice airflow. You can put your pots on top. So using organic matter, twigs, sticks, pine cones, whatever, that is a really good accessory. You also can get one of these, which is a holder or a plate to put on fuel tablets, etc. I'm not quite sure why they put little hex bolt holes in there so you can use it as a spanner, or put this on there, or a tape measure. For me, that doesn't really work. However, for somebody else, it may be a useful item or useful additions. What they also sent me, which is also an optional extra, is this. Now, I'll talk briefly about this. This is a toasting fork. It screws in there. And it also doubles up, does double duty as a blowpipe. It's quite long. Oh, can't get it on the screen. So that then you can use to shorten him down to blow air through there, so you can blow air into your fire and help to keep it going. So as an optional accessory, you would have to decide if that is something for you. Now, for me personally, I may not use the toasting fork part. I may not. I'll take it with me when I go out at some point, and I'll see if it's of any use. Having it as a blowpipe, for the want of a better word, so you can blow more air into the fire. If it's going out, going down, you need to get it going. That's more useful. You can make your own minds up about that one. Tell me what you think. Leave a comment. Is this item something that would be useful to you? Now, this little trivet makes things quite interesting because it changes this stove from a wood-burning stove or biomass stove to something that's a bit more multifunctional. Now, they say, Serotonin do, that they can use this with a Trangia type stove. So, put the Trangia in the top. It's a shame that the Trangia doesn't fit inside, because that would be ideal. But again, for my brief chatting online via email with Serotonin, they say that if they made this wider, it's not quite as efficient with the flame pattern. So that's why they're sticking with this particular width here. So when you put the trivet on top, you can then use it with pots on top of the Trangia. However, you can see it sits on top of the Trangia. Whoops. But it doesn't sit on anything else. So for me, personally, if I was to put a pot on there, I don't think I have one in the hand, just for a second. If I was to knock it, I don't think I've personally got enough confidence that that would remain stable enough. So using this, I wouldn't even bother with a trangia. I think that this could be used in a slightly different way with an alcohol stove. Because if you think about it, you place that in the bottom and then you place a trivet on top. You then have a steady platform for an alcohol stove. So, do we have an alcohol stove? Don't tell Mrs. InfoZhed how many I've got. Oh, one less. She says to me, "You're not buying another stove, are you?" And I go, no, not at all. My thought process is that with all that down inside there, raising it up, you could then put your own alcohol stove in. You could jam this door open with something. I haven't decided what yet, but anything to keep that open. You could do that with a stick or anything that you've got. That would allow airflow to go in there, and then you could put a pot on top. I've yet to try this, but I will at some point. The advantage of that would be that you've got really good wind resistance. There's literally no wind to get in there apart from whatever comes up underneath and whatever comes through that hole. So any short alcohol stove should work. And again, as I've been playing around with this a little bit, this is the Toke's siphon stove. Put him in there. I would imagine he'll work just fine. So I've kind of touched on alcohol stove function. I hope that's been useful to you. I now want to go on and talk about gas. Unfortunately, Serotonin Outdoors didn't send me their little gas stove that goes with this. So the idea is you put the gas stove in there, it slots in the slot there and slot there, sit it on top of the stove, and your gas pipe comes out of there. However, it's absolutely fine because I did a little project ages ago tinkering around, and I had a BCB alcohol stove cooker and I converted that to gas. And what I used to convert it to gas was this. Now, this was part of a stove that I bought off Amazon or somewhere. I think it was only about a tenner or something like that. And I just took all the legs apart, unscrewed all this, and I used this in the BCB cooker. And the only reason I'm telling you that is because the shape of the head. Now, if your head shape is, just a second, we get you in focus. There we are. If your head shape is like this, and you've got a little teeny weeny rim, and the width of your head, your gas head, is, say, there you go. I'm hoping you're getting that. There we are. Zoom you in so you can see it. 50 mil. That's where you need to be. 50 mil or 2 inches or thereabouts. Then you can use this in the little trivet that they give to you with the main stove. So I've worked out that you can just click that in and he fits absolutely perfectly. You've got a nice bit of head space. He's not going to come out if you put it in properly. There we are. He's not going to come out and go anywhere. So then that, open that door. That door, sorry, this is a bit of a nuisance. Trying to do this, talk to you, lean back at the same time. I do struggle a little. I need to get myself a cameraman. There we go. Turning round. Made a bit of a pig's ear of that. What you can see now is that I've set him up for gas. I hope this video has been useful to you. I wanted to cover a lot of the points that I've thought of regarding the main stove unit and the little upgrades, and also the accessories that you can get to go with it. The next time you see this, I'll be out in the wild, so to speak, adventurizing. I made that sound glamorous. I'll probably just be on a day out somewhere, but I want to give all this a real good go and a good run for its money and see how it performs. I just wanted to say as well, good job, Serotonin Outdoors. I can see you've made a load of improvements, and from my understanding, you're going to continue to innovate and improve. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. InfoZhed out.
This is the hour, the darkest place. Dante's Inferno, the devil's maze. It's a good world.